The following is a conversation with Emily Wright. Emily is a development director at River Valley Organizing. She lives approximately 5 miles from the devastating train wreck that occurred in East Palistine, Ohio. February 3rd of this year, in a small town in Ohio, a train derailed, damaging 50 cars, 11 of which contain hazardous materials such as vinyl chloride, ethylene, glycol, ether, and many others. These chemicals are directly linked to an increase in liver cancer, respiratory issues, loss of consciousness, drowsiness, nausea, and neurological issues. The nearly 5,000 town residents were evacuated. The water, soil, and air have been polluted to such an extent that fish and livestock have been found dead up to 7 miles away. This is quite possibly the worst ecological disaster since Chernobyl. The mass media did not cover this story for nearly 5 days, instead focusing their efforts on the Chinese balloon. Some questions to ponder. Why did the mass media ignore this devastating accident? Is it because Wall Street owns 75% of the railroad company responsible for this accident? Is it because the location the accident occurred in is a blue-collar, lower-income, rural town? Where do all the fumes end up long-term? Where do they go when they hit the jet stream? Should nearby states be taking caution? How are the real estate values for those nearly 5,000 residents affected? Have they been compensated by the company responsible? How about the water quality and soil samples? For the livestock that have been affected, is it safe to eat their food products? In an age that's so concerned with climate change and environmental stewardship, why has the government's response been so lax? Why has the budget for the railroad inspectors been cut to such an extent that they only spend on average 60 seconds inspecting each car per trip? Cars that contain hazardous material that have the potential to absolutely destroy the environment. Today, we are going to dive into this story. You are listening to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. If you are enjoying this content, please support our sponsors in the description. I thank each and every one of you for being on this journey with us. Now, please enjoy the show. Folks, listen up. I want to take a brief moment and thank our podcast show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic, Native Path Supplements, and Redmond Life. Lombardi Chiropractic has been my personal chiropractor for 10 years and has kept my body strong and healthy. Native Path supplements are used by numerous co-movement clients and our coaching team here at the facility. I highly recommend that you try their chocolate collagen peptides. I was made aware of Redmond Life by one of our trainers here at the facility. He recommended I try Relight electrolyte powder. This supplement has dramatically improved my afternoon energy levels and overall hydration. I'd like to thank these 3 companies for providing outstanding service and products that make our society healthier and more resilient. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's C-O-M-O 15, at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com or redmond.life and receive 15% off all your orders. Your support to our show sponsors assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope you all enjoy. Emily, welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I wish we were talking under better circumstances.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have you on this call today with me. I'm a huge advocate for, a healthy environment. We work with a lot of clients, in regards to improving their health. And what we have going on in Ohio right now, a lot of people don't know about. And so can we just start off with you just giving a basic explanation of what happened February 3rd down in East Palestine, Ohio?
Yeah. So on February 3rd, so we're at a week now, or 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 2 weeks. It was around 9:00 p.m. and between 9 and 10 when a Norfolk Southern train derailed in around East Palestine, Ohio, which is right on the border of Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. It's north west of Pittsburgh. and right on that PA line, and it derailed, crashed, a huge fire. From what we were told, it was being controlled. I didn't really know a lot Friday, Saturday, because I'm 5 miles from the site. I'm not right at the site. So, but they were, they evacuated people immediately. Then they had more people on Saturday they evacuated because the contents of the car started coming out. Unfortunately, we heard a lot of misinformation at first. We heard that it was 10 cars of vinyl chloride and that it could be flammable. And they weren't sure. So Sunday night, the fire starts to be controlled, and everybody's, we still don't really know what is in the cars yet. And there's an explosion at the site. And I got an emergency alert on my phone on Sunday night, that they were evacuating the area, but I wasn't in the evacuation zone. They went back a mile more of a radius. And they were concerned that the cars were going to blow and that shrapnel. The big concern was that, like, we weren't being really told about the environmental portion. It was just the shrapnel could explode and it could go up to a mile, and it's very dangerous. So Monday morning, I woke up and my phone is just full of messages from I work with River Valley Organizing. We're a nonprofit grassroots community organizing group, and we work with a lot of different injustices that are tied together. But the first one that we really started with was environmental justice. So we have a lot of national affiliates that we work with and regional affiliates, and they all reached out and they said, you all need to start organizing around this. And, this is in your communities. You have people that live in and around East Palestine that work for you. Our offices are about 20 minutes south of East Palestine. And then we have offices in Portsmouth, Ohio, which is at the other end of the Ohio River Valley. So we were like, okay, we got to figure out what's actually going on, especially for myself, because I wasn't sure. We heard that there was a press conference coming at 1:00. Our governor, DeWine, told everybody that they were out of good options. Basically, there weren't really great options, but they had options, which I appreciate because I, being forward with that. And that they were going to do a controlled release of the vinyl chloride. At that point, they had verified that 5 cars, not 10, we were first told 10, had vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is used to make plastics, and it, when burned off, basically can, cause irritation of the lungs, can cause issues neurologically, can cause asthmatic flares, skin rashes, stuff like that when exposed, right away. A large exposure later on or a continued exposure with working can lead to the National Health Institute. It can lead to liver cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So, they wanted to burn this off, and the plan was to do it at 3:30 p.m. on Monday. So the cloud went like all the way up and not up and out. Apparently, I'm not a scientist, but there's an aversion cloud thing where I guess that if they had done it at that right time, it would have taken it mostly all up into, the stratosphere or whatever. Unfortunately, what happened was this: it did go up, but it went out over 6 counties.
Yep.
So we had, unfortunately, I don't know why. I don't want to sensationalize anything because I know that's happening a lot right now. But the controlled release went off 2 hours late. It was supposed to be at 3:30 p.m. I even picked my daughter up from school because I didn't want her to be on the bus route when it happened. Because we're right out, next to East Palestine. And instead of happened at 5:45, there was high winds forecasted. So I believe that's why they wanted to do it before, which is what they've referenced now. I don't know why it went off late. So it went over. I went out for a very short period of time after the burn, and it smelled like you were at the pool, but it had a sweet smell too. you could not see anything in the sky over Youngstown north of us. Like the lights looked black. So we thought at first it was night. It turned night.
Wow.
No, this was a cloud. We started getting pictures in as far south as, East Liverpool, Wellsville, Ohio, 30 minutes, or having this cloud up in Trumbull County, another 40 miles north. People are, saying I'm sick, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea was one of the symptoms. People's teeth hurt. I looked up, that's a vinyl chloride thing. I never heard of that. My teeth hurt as well, but I have TMJ and I'm a realist. So that's just what I blamed it on. But we have a response form that we just told people, tell us what you heard, saw, smell. We just want to know after the burn. And I went through the responses and a lot of them are all the same, So the next day, Tuesday, we have pouring in photos, dead chickens, dead fox. I didn't even know we have a fox sanctuary here. Dead foxes. A couple people reported their dogs died. They were outside during the burn. There was, I believe, about 3,500 to 4,000 fish that were, dead in the waterways. And we just were told, yeah, it was a lot of animals. And I know that they're more sensitive to these things. So, it can affect the animal population a lot quicker. But people even from Enon Valley, which is in Pennsylvania, north of us, sent pictures that their chicken was putting out weird eggs. Now I can't, I can correlate that. I can't prove that, but it was very strange that these things were happening. So the whole time we just kept being told, even during the burn, like the control release, we kept being told that there were no toxins in the air. That's what was the media, the government officials, and by government I mean like state government, not local, because that's not their job. Just kept telling us the air is good, there's no toxins. And I was confused because when the EPA says things, they usually do it in this language. It's acceptable for human consumption. So they're not going to tell you there's no toxins. So I was just a bit confused about that. And they weren't saying anything about water, soil, or surface testing. And that was not in the conversation. When they were asked, we were told water and soil is ongoing, which we know that's going to be ongoing. But they let people back into their homes. So there's no surface decontamination of their homes, which means the blast, all the stuff that's been burning for 3-4 days is all in their homes. They were told they could go back with an air quality monitor test that was done in their home. I have a paper that somebody brought me that, they did, but they didn't do water and soil before they let them back in. So people go back in. Some people have experienced still being sick, rashes, not feeling well, general malaise. And, their water still smells like, okay, so I don't know if you, where, you're from or anything, but here our basements are mostly unfinished. A lot of our houses are old. And we have water that comes in just because we live with all the tributaries to the Ohio River. And people live, even in East Palestine, there's waterways everywhere. And then they started, telling us, well, the water was affected because the fish are dead. It wasn't just the burn. We put 2 dams up and it should stop the downward flow of the chemicals. Okay. But people still had stuff, running in their houses, that type of thing. So then the water's safe, we're told, like the East Palestine residents and everybody around. Then the governor comes on, a few days ago and says, I'd be drinking bottled water.
Oh.
And so they're told to drink bottled water. Now he's saying it's safe. So 2 days ago, we did confirm that the river did get polluted. It started, and Weirton, West Virginia had reported that they were working with the firefighters to try to get set to stop, to put up I guess there's, damming they can do. But there's one of the chemicals that was in the train that is showing up in people's drinking water now. And several, I think it was 8 cities released statements that they did test these items in the water, but they felt they were low enough that it wouldn't be an issue for people. But they didn't really give them any advice, you know? So people in stupid, like there's no bottled water anywhere. And it's not out of sensationalism, it's because people literally don't know. My family, we were told, like we haven't drank the water because we were told by the community, like, be careful while you're waiting for, answers. So it's not that there's a conspiracy here. It's not that anybody's saying that's conspiratorial. It's just unfortunately how Norfolk Southern operates after a disaster. And unfortunately, this was one of the worst train derailments chemical wise. We found out that even the EPA wasn't really made aware the first couple days what was actually in there. There were 4 chemicals other than vinyl chloride. One was, oh my gosh, I've talked to some, so sorry. It's butyl I forget, I'm going to say it wrong. It's been the one in the drinking water mostly that's being tested. But we also found, they said at the conference that a little bit of lube oil had come out of the car. And he went like this when he did it. He did his fingers small. And 30, it was like tens of thousands of gallons of crude oil spilled into the ground too, that they found out. So this is a multi-layered event. And I've been all over talking to anybody who will talk to me. I've been on a lot of national news, and I get that some of the news pundits, especially on the more conservative side, are trying to like sensationalize this and use it, against the government. But I have to say this is a layered thing. If I could just 2 minutes explain like why it's everybody's fault. It's Norfolk Southern's fault because this is what they do. They have 71 million in I believe 71 million since 2000 in violations, and that's just safety. That's just safety. And 21 million of those are related to environmental safety. They have several lawsuits against them from employees about how they treat, like during derailments, about the safety of the employees themselves. Norfolk Southern also they're lobbying right now to have conductor-free trains. That's something that I found. I can't find a lot of information about it, but I do know that they're looking towards that. And there's a lot of conductors right now that are speaking out saying that that's the case. So unfortunately, because of commerce, our federal government has an incredibly tight tie to the railroad system. I have my family's either worked for the industry or lived by a railroad track my entire life in some way. So I know we're intricately tied to that. But there's 25 million Americans along these lines from Conway, Illinois to Pennsylvania. And they're in the path of these bomb trains, which a bunch of us, in these different collaboratives appealed to the EPA like 10 years ago. We tried to start a campaign, that people called it bomb train, because that's what it basically is like. You put highly flammable, highly toxic materials from fracking waste to, general radioactive waste, from all types of industries, from, plastics, and you put them in residential neighborhoods and they're at high speeds. I mean, something's going to happen. So we kept trying to warn and warn. And another thing is, in our area, we have layered degradation. So like my father has bilateral asbestosis from working at the mill at Weirton Steel for years. He has rheumatoid arthritis. It's most likely from that. My mom had 2 types of primary breast cancer living near the waste incinerator,
Wow.
after living there for 7 years. She developed those. I can't say that's 100% correct, but I have a family member that has multiple myeloma right now, worked in the nuclear industry. And, when you look back through, a lot of those people have that myeloma. So there's all of these things that are connected, but you can't quite say, the asbestosis is for sure. I mean, my father worked with that. So, but then, it's layered. So we're if your family isn't working in it, the industries are by you, they're happening. And it's not that we're against progress or commerce or a healthy market. But unfortunately, there are people that are being sacrificed for that to happen. And us in Appalachia are some of the people that are the poorest that can't really advocate much for ourselves.
Yeah, that is so sad. That safety, the safety issue down there in terms of, the confusion around protocols. Is the water clean? Is it dirty? Is the air clean? Is it dirty?
Mhm.
It seems like the whole thing was completely botched. And it appears also that I didn't know anything about this till like 5 days after. Like there was like almost nothing in the mass media about this. There were
Nothing.
small channels doing things. And, I started to do my research here and it was like, this is a huge, huge issue and they're not making a big issue out of it. Right. And when I started to hear some of the numbers, what you just said with the safety violations, like you said, 70 million or so safety
Yeah,
violations since
I think it
2000.
was 70, yeah, 70 million in
Ye-
total in safety.
Yeah, since the year 2070 million. And then they had, I think I read another 21 million in environmental violations.
Yes.
And so there's something here that isn't being I don't know how to say it. Like it's just there's something wrong here, right? They're operating solely for profits and not for the safety of the people along the rail lines. And that's very sad.
It's sad for everybody because all right, so you have our all elected officials come in, um, they tell us all different things that is the fault. So Norfolk Southern, of course, is at fault. They also, like our Governor DeWine, this is what he asked Congress to do something, which I agree with. I really do. But he said that he had no knowledge that these trains were coming through with these items. Now, he's correct in the fact that there were safety regulations that were loosened up, and I believe it might have been from the Trump administration, and I don't think that the Biden, I don't know for sure, but I don't believe they were shored up. So safety regulations went to the fact that Norfolk Southern doesn't have to report to the state of Ohio that they're moving through with these items. So he did not get that report. He's correct, but he knows that they come through here. Everybody knows. I mean, there was a campaign. We've talked about it. Everybody's aware. Officials are aware. They understand. So while he's right that this needs to be taken care of through legislation and at the federal level, and they need to stop having such a close-knit tie with the railroad that they look away from safety, he's totally right. He's wrong about the fact that he had no knowledge of. It's just not, unless he just really just doesn't pay attention. I highly doubt it. So for me, it's not about a partisan thing. It's about calling out everybody that needs to do something. And Norfolk Southern is first, because this is one of the things that made me so angry. I've worked for corporate, I get it. Like I get it's for profit. I understand. I understand. But they were making people go through this super tedious reimbursement process. So our organization actually started story building with people. Our main organizer is actually from the site. She's down at the Derailment evac zone, and her husband have been working with us in the past for canvassing, but they came on as like full staff to organize this because, for one, we're not having anybody outside of the community do this. Even though I'm 5 miles out, I'm still not in that community. And, we want to invest in the community in general and see what they want to organize around. But we went to these lines and people are waiting for Norfolk Southern reimbursement to get a hotel that night, sometimes for hours. And, they had to keep coming back every day because they weren't sure, because Norfolk Southern said, you could be allowed back in your homes tomorrow. We don't know. I mean, this is a company that could have called the YMCA, could have called any high school around, could have called, hotels and said, we're buying you out for a week, or we're going to put people up, and I bet you that would have changed a lot, but the problem is that not only did we have the derailment, now we know that the train broke down 2 days before, and that 2 employees reported to CBS that they told corporate that it was too heavy, and that,
Wow.
yeah, I'll send you, I have a video. I heard chatter, but for me, we have to wait until, for me to talk about something, it has to be verified. Just because of the level that we're talking at now with people. And yeah, so that was on our local WKBN news that CBS, their affiliate, had put out a national report that anonymously 2 employees came and said they told them that the car was too heavy and that it had just broke down and that they were worried about derailment. So people are angry because not only are we finding out that they hid what spilled, that they knew that it was an issue, and that now they're making people like stand in line for reimbursements. And I have information from residents about people being talked to about hold harmlesses, and there's other, there's lawyers coming in now for class action lawsuits, and it's unfortunate. Like, we want to make sure that the East Palestine residents aren't like, there's not predatory things happening to them to like take advantage of this as well. So we have independent lawyers that are environmental lawyers that are working for free, that aren't soliciting anybody. We're gonna have a public meeting February 23rd, 25 Studio, East Palestine, next Thursday at 6 p.m. We're gonna have researchers, doctors from the University of Pitt and University of Kentucky, and they're going to be doing long-term independent soil testing studies and water testing studies over a long term, and they're going to be doing that totally free of charge. So if people come to this meeting, they need to know first, they're not being solicited, they're not being asked for money, that it's only there for the community to feel like that there's somebody hearing them. And the independent testing is important from universities that do this type of testing for the last 20 years, because it's credible, it's blinded, it's another set, so that's what we're going to do. But yeah, it's, I read an article in the New York Times today, and it was about how everything's being sensationalized by right-wing pundits. I'm upset about that too. I don't like anybody, whether what side of the aisle you're on, sensationalizing anything. But unfortunately, it's still bad here. Even if this is, being sensational, it's what happened is not sensationalized. And I really do challenge all the media and to really speak to residents before they write articles, and before I get interviews are different. But before they write articles, I've read several articles from all different types of the aisle of outlet that are not really talking to residents. So residents are on the ground. You can talk to them if you go. Also, if you reach out to River Valley Organizing, we're going to hook you up with them too. So they're there to talk to. And, that should really happen before long range, or even short term, reporting. So I just want people to know that even though people have sensationalized a few things, it's what I'm telling you is true. And people are very confused. Like, do we drink the water? Do we not drink the water? Is our creek, our creek smells, there was dead fish. Is it okay? Is it going to be okay? Are our homes toxic? Our surfaces, if we clean it, are we going to be contaminating ourselves because we don't have the right gear? These are questions people have. And we have people that are, just to be honest, just our area, 75% of our area is highly conservative. But if you look at the residents, it doesn't matter. Everybody's banding together. Even with that reporter that was arrested, that they dropped the charges from News Nation. I don't know if you saw that on YouTube. So we had a reporter that was arrested at one of the press conferences because he was
yes, I saw that,
talking too loudly, and they basically manhandled him. And he is an Emmy-winning producer and reporter from News Nation. And they dropped all the charges, but I went to a protest at the courthouse for them to drop the charges. And the people that I was with, I've protested against on other things.
Sure.
And, you know, I had somebody hand me a sign and say, it's really nice to see you beside me, you know, like, and there was no animosity. We all understand that we disagree about a lot of things, but there has to be a camaraderie of, hey, this is First Amendment speech that's being, you know, put down. People just want to know what's happening. And so it's a very nonpartisan like issue that is really binding us together, because no matter what you feel or what you think, they're doing the same thing to all of us. You know, it's happening to us. So but yeah, I really feel like the state government needs to be more explicit with the federal government about how bad this has been, about how it really wasn't under control. And that's not, doesn't have to be anybody's fault, like other than Norfolk Southerns, you know, but you know, and I need the federal government, I need this administration to look at their relationship with the railroad, and not with the union, with paying people well and that type of thing. And no, I mean corporate, with a relationship with the, sorry, there's a train going by, the corporate, and it's Norfolk Southern. You can hear it. But you know, it's the train, it's all of it combined. So it's this agreement that's been going on for decades between, you know, with that. And so they never really pay. But I am glad to listen to elected officials saying we're going to do something about Norfolk Southern, because we can come back to that in 3 years when it's a possibility that people are sick with cancer or something's happening, and saying, what are you doing? Like you said, you were going to make them pay. So hopefully out of this bad event, this tragedy, where no one did die in the immediate, which is why I think it didn't get the attention it deserved. Sorry, 1 second. You know, I get that, like there's an earthquake in Turkey that killed tens of thousands of people. It's awful. It's absolutely devastating. What's happening in the world. But this we are dying. We're just dying later. You know, we're dying, like in Ohio, in our area, especially around like our waste incinerators, our cancer rates are like almost double what they are in the rest of the state. Like I think it was at one point the state was like 400 and some people per 1,000, and in East Liverpool it was like 612 per 1,000. So it's not like, if you look at the large, and I have a nursing background and stuff, and if you look at the large implications of all of these, you know, disease patterns and studies, it shows that, you know, we're being, you know, and I don't want to know, I know the word poisoned is a strong word, but you know, it's a weird thought to have to go buy plastic bottled water because the vinyl chloride that's used to make the plastic spilled everywhere. Like you see how interconnected the profit system is. So that's where you know, we have a lot of fights about, you know, our market and if it's free and it's not free. But I know one thing, people around here aren't free, you know, to live their lives exactly how they want, because stuff like this just keeps happening.
Well, yeah, and you are absolutely correct. You are being poisoned down there, and the people around these centers and railroads and stuff, it's the data shows that, right? So if the data shows that, what are we doing from a policy standpoint, right? Because like everyone now, the big thing is with the climate change, environmentalism, right? Like that's a big narrative now, which I think is good in many ways, but it seems like there's so many more things that are doing horrible things to towns such as yours that really isn't drawing the right attention, I think.
Yeah, it's very true. I consider myself, you know, a pretty progressive person in my thoughts and stuff, but there's a problem with environmentalism for this reason. And
Mhm.
I'm fairly new to this work as far as like in a official capacity. I've done activism, I've done things, but um, one of the things that draws people away from environmental work is it's not people focused.
Mhm.
So, okay, we hear about, I wrote an op-ed, a couple op-eds, and that's why we got some of the national media attention, because we circulated it around and stuff. But one of the things that I talked about was, this, we hear environment, we shut down because we hear climate change, which I mean, I get it's a massive issue. My family would like me to shut up about it, actually. But, climate change, straws and turtles' noses, these are the things that people like, but we're 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 organizing around environmental issues to save our lives. Like
Mhm.
this isn't you know okay, a lot of times people that are white and have money and are affluent get in those causes, and I'm very
Yep.
glad for that, but they don't really look at the people like us that
Yep.
aren't affluent and live in communities that have Black and brown people that people are trying to pretend aren't there, and poor white folk, and all of us in this area in Appalachia in general are in what we like to call sacrifice zones. This is where, like, we're the Rust Belt kids, but it rusted and then it was replaced with another industry. It's always replaced. So when the steel went down, and my dad was a union arbitrator for the mill, and we were very involved, and when that was going down, that was very awful for us, but it keeps getting replaced.
Mhm.
So while people are fighting about, I'm very passionate. I don't like plastics, the ocean, that, but there are things that are happening on our ground right now that are giving people, like, I believe our life expectancy in our one couple of our villages is like 10 years less than the national average.
Oh, wow.
So our men, our
Huh.
men are, because of this layered degradation, our men are working, and women now too, now that things have changed, until they're in their 50s and 60s. And by the time they retire, their bodies are worn out. And they have disease patterns from this job. It costs to be poor. It
Mhm.
costs to be poor. And this is not a conspiracy. This is just an observation, I guess I'll say. So I've worked in, with healthcare, and I've worked in a corporate sense with a lot of large university hospitals. And if you look at where the large university hospitals are that have all of the groundbreaking cancer and different research, places, it's right along the belt. You have, Northwestern, you have University of Cincinnati, Cleveland, you have Pitt, you have, UPMC, and it's literally all just
Yep.
right along here. It's not because it's a conspiracy. They need to be there because these are the places that, and they get built up because they can do studies on these things because we're here. So it's all a money. We have a for-profit system in all of this. So at some point, to get people to really be advocated for, all types of people, legislation does need to change. But unfortunately, we got a lot of finger pointing right now.
Yep.
But hopefully we're going to work very, very hard to push our elected officials on every side of the aisle to do the right thing. We don't care what your affiliation is. We're nonpartisan. We're here to be checks and balances. So we're going to keep doing that for sure.
Yeah, we need a conscious capitalism system, right? Like capitalism works at some extent for sure, but we've been driven now to the point that instances like what's going on now, where I've read that Norfolk Southern it says 75% of it was owned by Wall Street or is owned by Wall Street. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I didn't know that. But yeah, I did look that up I heard that a lot, so I looked it up to verify. Yeah, I think it's like 3/4 of they're owned by Wall Street. Yeah, which is a big, push for like their corporate to never lose a profit, because if they lose a
Yep.
profit, then they lose an investor.
Yeah, and that's at the expense of thousands upon thousands of lives. And can you imagine where else we're cutting corners, right? And affecting health dramatically. You
Yeah.
know, that's truly sad. Do you feel optimistic about the residents getting compensated? Because I think about this, I've been thinking about this a lot since we scheduled this interview. You know, real estate values, for example, are going to go down.
They're gone.
r-
They're gone. I mean, who the heck's gonna buy a house there?
right, so you've got that, and then, you know, most importantly, you have health. And like you said, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, like where how is this going to be structured to help these 5,000 plus people, you know, long term, short term? You know, what if someone wants to, say they're approaching retirement age and they want to sell their property that's valued at 200,000 and it's worth almost nothing now? Like, how does that get compensated? Like, I think about that where I am. I'm in rural upstate New York. So we're not too far from you. And we're a rural town, you know, a lot of blue collar workers, a lot of farmers. And
Yeah.
like, you know, a lot of people's main net worth essentially is their property, right? And their
Yeah.
land. And if this now is just contaminated, let's even say that the reports come back in a year or two and the contamination is gone. The
Sure.
precedent has already been set.
Yeah.
And, you know, and again, I'm not sure, maybe it won't make a difference. I don't know, but I do
It
think
will.
about this. In addition to the health piece, what are your thoughts on that, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. You know, but I absolutely, that's my concern too. Actually, it's a major concern of residents. A lot have, one of our first, we had a meeting in our office like a week when this was just started to, it was before the media caught attention. Okay. So we're like working on the ground with people, working 18-hour days, between, you know, you got people on the ground calling people, you know, calling us and running around. And it was very, just trying to story build and figure out what was going on. We had Sherrod Brown's Appalachia representative come into our office and speak to people because he really wanted to get a grasp on what was going on. He's one of our senators in Ohio. And really wanted to know like what's happening on the ground. So we had him in and we had people come in to the office, and you know, we had several people that said to us, you know, we're extremely concerned about a property value. Like, like, yeah, we're worried about our health, but what if we don't want to stay? Or what if, you know, in the future, like you said, like people want to stay, but like, what if when you're retiring, you want to get a smaller house somewhere? Or, you know, there's a lot of farmland all surrounding this area. You know, there's concerns, absolutely. And I do have hope because we're working with Fair Shake and Earth Justice, and they're two environmental law firms. And you know, they're going to be giving people a lot of good legal advice of like, know your rights. Like, we just want to make sure people are totally educated by people that are in a position to educate before they make decisions. Because okay, so Norfolk gave everybody $1,000. All right, check in the
Really?
yeah, if you were in the evac zone. But
Wow,
I
$1,000.
have, yeah, we have one of our people that is right from on the ground, and I just love her. She's great. She comes to me and she goes, you know, look at this, and I'm not going to say the expletive, you know, and I said, yeah, and this is okay. They think we're stupid because we're in Appalachia, you know, like, and this person is, you know, she works on, I think she's worked on like an oil rig. She's been a lot of places. So she's been in the industry. She knows. She said, I took this to my lawyer and made sure that it didn't clear them of anything if I took this $1,000 check. And she said that 3 different lawyers said that it doesn't, that it's not like a hold harmless or anything. So people checked before they took those checks. Like,
Sure.
these people are smart. That's the problem. They're smart. And when they had the town hall meeting that turned into an open house, that turned into kind of a photo op for Bill Johnson, for our representative in the Ohio House.
Uh,
It just went, it kept changing. Norfolk Southern backed out. They said their employee safety was at stake because they basically implied that residents were going to beat up
sure.
their staff. So they didn't come. They didn't come to the meeting. So they're not at the open house. And, it's, people were very, very angry because their questions aren't being answered. And I just think they want to know what happened to us. When can we feel safe to drink the water, or, our home safe? And unfortunately, there's just a lot of not great streamlined communication from our elected officials. And when I say elected officials, just know I'm leaving the city out of this totally. This is not like, this is such a big, they should not have, the elected officials in that city should only have to worry about being with people, but they've got a lot of load on them. So I'm talking state, federal, but our governor just came out. We pushed him to do a federal emergency, and he says that we don't qualify for it, that he's spoken with the administration, and that he believes that we don't qualify. Now, for FEMA, we wanted FEMA in here because we wanted people to actually be helped. Like, why couldn't have anybody have hired an extra cleanup crew to do the people's houses before they went back in? Why couldn't they have been given an extra week until maybe some more water and soil testing? Because now we're finding all this contamination downriver. The plume's supposed to hit of the accolade. It's supposed to hit in Huntington, West Virginia today, which, if you know anything about the geography, that's 300 miles south of East Palestine almost. And that's so we're just now finding, they kept telling us the water's fine. They didn't know the water was fine. That's the issue. It's not that, it's just people want to be safe. So, and there's people that have chosen not to go back, but I even had a guy come in that used to work for the railroad that said they're not going to go back right now, but he has money saved back. He said, I have privilege in this area because I was able to save money back, so I can do that. But most people can't, they can't. They have to make the choice. I go back home with my kids and my family because I don't have the cash to. So that's our big issue, is we just want to make sure that, and I do think that you're highlighting and the media's highlighting of this, even if it's sensationalized, is good, because in 1 to 3 years, if we do have people popping up with cancer, 3 to 5 years is even, can be, or with other things that are issues that could be related to this, we can make sure that, our for-profit healthcare system isn't the only thing they have, because, I have a $17,000 out of pocket. So if I were to get sick and really sick, and to be honest with you, it would be hard for me with my network to even find a place to treat my, I have one place I could go to. So that's what we want to make sure, is that people are, and not just taken care of, you want to make sure people have the money they need if they're going through that. So I do have hope. I have hope that because of this highlighting and because of the independent testing that's going to happen, and the EPA testing, and I really do feel that people will be, but unfortunately what's done is done. So we can't go back to where they didn't have that exposure.
No, well, you're absolutely right, Emily. Money can only solve some problems, right? But the big problems with the health and the soil, right? Money can't solve that, and I'm hoping that this story gets enough attention to create change within the safety industry, with these railroads. And there's just so many other sectors. We have up here in New York, There was a lake in central New York that for years it was just polluted with these manufacturing huge buildings just dumping like sewage and chemicals. And, there's no life that lives in that lake anymore,
Right.
and, I think there's a lot of that throughout the United States that is just outdated technology, outdated rules that we're just sort of ignoring because it's easier that way and it doesn't affect profits.
Right.
My suggestion, I think there should be, let's say there's 5,000 people in that blast zone that were possibly affected the most. There needs to be some kind of settlement where they get free health care for something that is related to, based on a doctor's opinion, related to the condition for the life of that individual. And then I think that they should also get compensated for 50 to 75% of their appraised real estate value. So if your house is, say, appraised at 100,000, you should get a check for 75,000 and you can spend it how you wish. But realistically, that would be the only thing from a monetization standpoint that would be truly ethical, I think, to really make up for what happened here. And we know that being that it's a town of about 5,000 people, the math could work out on that, right? Like Norfolk Southern is I can't say what their worth is from a company. I would assume multiple billions.
It is.
But
Yeah.
like to take care of 5,000 people is very doable. It's
And
not
not
like
only is
New
it
York
doable,
City.
they could wipe their butt with the amount of money. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but they could literally wipe their butt with the amount of money that they could put into that. Yeah, it's disgusting. So
Yeah.
while I want policy to change, I do want to make sure that I'm still saying like this is still a Norfolk Southern can do what it did because of that policy, but they also made the choice to do this. They don't have to operate this way. They don't, I mean, even they didn't have to send a train that was too heavy that it broke down through our area. They didn't have to cover up, for days, try to minimize what happened. I that's the issue. So yeah, that would be the only ethical one. I am hoping that for the residents that they do get, justice like that. But what our big thing is everybody keeps talking about how the area needs to heal, but justice-centered healing is the only way to move forward. And just even though there were 5,000 people affected, there were probably more like 100,000 people that experienced the burn, way more than that actually. But there's 100,000 people just in Columbiana County. And everybody in Columbiana County smelled, heard, saw something, couldn't breathe, had symptoms, had animal issues, and then even other counties. So there are people in PA right now that are reaching out to us that, too. So a lot of people are affected, and we are not sure of the long-term effects, and we're not sure when to start drinking the water, and it's just a lot. So but for sure, if you're on this and you're from East Palestine, whether you come through our organization or not, please just make sure that you're checking all your options and rights legally before you make any decisions, so you can get the best, the most possible, and that type of thing. So, and if you do come through our organization or a public meeting, just know that we're not here profiting off of this. Like, we're organizing around our own community issues. This is us too. We have over half of all of our team was affected, and several members of our team were right around the evac site and that. So we're just as angry as you, and we want to make sure that we have professionals that are not, that are trained, that are with us to help. So that's why we have the university studies and the different law, lawyers that want to come in pro bono and just to give people advice.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Emily, you have a huge heart. You are inspiring. All the work that you and your company are doing. How can people learn more and possibly support your nonprofit agency, River Valley Organizing?
So when this all happened, we were in the middle of like hiring a comms director, doing like capacity building because things are starting to really roll. So at this point, our website is getting worked on for the next 4 weeks because we were in the middle of working on it when this happened. So you're not going to get a lot of like great updates from that, but we're a nonprofit, so we're not taking that down. That stays up. But you can follow our Facebook. It's River Valley Organizing. It's all lowercase together. You'll find us. Instagram, same thing. We're also on Twitter. And we have a link tree that is in our Instagram that has everything you could think of. It has, if you give to Cash App or PayPal, we're pretty much using all those funds straight for East Palestine. So you know that you're given to that. When we have our things on there. Our action network we're working on right now, but we have a petition you can sign, op-eds, registration to vote if you're in Ohio. So they can follow that link tree from the Instagram and get that. And definitely follow us and know that our work is nonprofit and in nature, and not in nature, in everything. And we are nonpartisan, so we do not affiliate with any political party. We are pushing our elected officials to do the right thing.
That's great. Emily, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, we will connect the links for your website and Facebook and all of that when this gets launched in the show description.
Okay.
And we'll spread the word as much as we can. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Bye.